Hello there. Today we're talking about round tea bags. Now this is rather a long distance reply to a comment left on my YouTube previous tea bag video by somebody, was it Rachel Cooper, asked me how to deal with round tea bags. And my life at the end of last year, or the last 6 months of last year, hit a series of road bumps, and I've only just now finally gotten around to dealing with that comment. So apologise for the delay, but there you go. These things occur. Round tea bags, I don't use them a lot, so I had to go and buy some, but there are some differences in both the texture. So I don't know whether they're actually made from different fabrics. The ordinary rectangle tea bags feels much silkier and smoother and finer. These feel more like, for me it feels more like a non-woven sort of interfacing. If you're a sewer, it feels slightly different. It feels different, and they do behave quite differently. They both spray very well. You can spray them and it takes the colour really well. So that was a similarity. But before we get on to those, let's just look at the ways of opening it. I used the bags, made some heavily stained tea dye for my journal pages that I make, and left these in a bit of a pile on some paper towel to dry. Then when they were about 2/3 dry, not quite dry but almost, I smoothed them out a little bit and cut them open, tipped out the still slightly dampish interiors and flattened them a little and left them to dry. So that's very easy, very similar to the last ones. The only difference was that you can't tease them open like you can with the rectangle ones. You can just tease them apart, and if these little edge bits tear, then you can just pull those edges off and they're fine. With these you do have to cut them. You can't just pull them apart at the sides and sort of unravel them like you can with the rectangles. There's two different ways. This one, the obvious one, was just to insert the scissor and snip across the centre like so, and then use that little gap to empty out the slightly damp tea bags and to lay flat and let it dry. And the other one, the one that I prefer, because it's not that really shows, but it's almost completely invisible once you do something with the tea bag, is to insert the scissor and just snip around the very edge where that little double edge is, where they've been pressed, the two sides have been pressed together. You can see there's a little serration there. If you just snip around, you can of course take that bottom layer completely off if you wanted to, but I didn't see any point. So that's the way I prefer, easiest way to do it, or you can just snip them straight across. I did also try, you can use a circle die. That one's a little large, but you could use something like that and just cut them out completely and just use the resulting two circles. You would have two circles the same size, but you would need to cut off all of the edgy little bit if you wanted to do them that way. Right. Having done that, I decided to play with them a bit to see what can you do with these. I tried stamping, which doesn't work quite as effectively, doesn't work quite nearly as well as with the rectangles. Stamping doesn't sort of work, but it's okay if that's what you wanted to do. I tried colouring, and that was much less successful. It didn't have the subtlety, it didn't absorb into the fabric like the original one did, so I wasn't very happy with that. So didn't do much with those. But then I thought, what about embossing? So I got out one of my embossing folders, and this is a Ultimate Crafts, and it's called Calvin's Quarter Foil. It's just a small A2, and it's got quite a nice little design on it. And embossed it. This was one that had been sprayed, and then I put it through the embossing folder, and that worked pretty well. But I found I got a much better result if I actually used a die, cut out a scrap piece of cardstock, adhered it on the back, and then put it through the embossing folder. Get a much more definite embossed effect. I've rubbed my finger over with a bit of gold over the top just to highlight the colour, because it was fairly dark. But you can see what a nice effect that is. And if you made the coin ATCs that are quite popular, then that might be a nice way to use, because you get to use the whole size of the tea bag. One thing I did find that was quite different was that they die cut very nicely with dies, and some of them you can even punch, which you simply can't do with these. I found with the ordinary tea bags that unless you actually put them onto paper, they can be, back them onto paper, they can be quite tricky to punch out. But if you put them on paper, then you can. Okay, so that's basically really all the differences I found. They punch and die cut very well. They don't stamp, in my opinion, and colour nearly as well as the rectangle ones. They take sprays very, very well. And here's a couple of things that I've made with them. This was a little card I made using some of these spray dyed tea bags, and I just cut them out using these dies, little flower shapes, and a couple of punches, and I've layered that up on a tea bag and mounted that on an old, I like to use the, I don't know, the frontispiece, those spare pages at the front and back of old books that you're recycling. Often it's lovely creamy paper, so I hate to waste it, and they make wonderful mats for things like cards. So I've made a little card with that, just to use the fabric itself. And with this one I've used one of those embossed medallions to make a tag for a gift card with a bit of shiny purple cord and some homemade beads, just to continue the colour, and that'll make a nice tag to put on a gift card, a gift bag rather. So there you go. That's really all that I found out about them. There's some similarities and some differences, but I think especially if you, as I said, if you like making the coin ATCs, these could be quite nice. You could do lots of things with them. You could collage over them, and you could use the design, and being able to spray them to get some nice depth of colours makes a nice little background. So thanks for asking the question. It made me have a little play, and thanks for watching. Talk to you soon. Bye now.